Weber State Weekly Football Show. We're a member of the Big Sky Podcast Network, and I am your host, Colby Peterson, on the show today, whenever you listen to this. We got a returning champion, Dustin Chappie Chapman, fresh off of a stint up at Stewart Stadium. Chappie, how was the game day atmosphere? I saw attendance 9,000 in the
It was a good
building.
crowd.
Yeah,
It was a great crowd. Students showed up. They were loud. They were chanting. Band sounded good. Tailgate was good. Had a special visitor at the tailgate. It was a great day. It was a great atmosphere. The person I was sitting with, who's not here tonight, Sean Lewis. I looked at him about the third quarter. I'm like, this is a great atmosphere. It feels great here tonight. Everything feels excellent. And of course, we were pounding the ball too and winning the game, and couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, good atmosphere. Weather was nice. Tailgate was good. Wildcats' offense looked good. The defense looked good. Shoot, man. It's all good on Saturday night. So let's talk a little bit about the upcoming show, man. So tonight, no player interview. We were not able to get with our player this week, but we do have some game analysis for you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that matchup against Utah Tech on Saturday night, give our takes with that. And then I've got a little game for Chappie called What If? I've got a particularly important question, about what Chappie would do in a what if scenario. So we're going to throw that out to him and kind of see what he says. I've got my own, but we'll see what Chappie says. We'll give our takes and why we think that that's the thing that we would do. But before we get into that, let's encourage everybody to subscribe to the show, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. If you know fellow Wildcat fans who are not aware of Weber State Weekly, we would appreciate you telling them. Word of mouth is the best way to advertise, right, Chappie? You can't buy that with any amount of ad revenue. And so, yeah, man, we want to encourage you to tell everybody about Weber State Weekly, whether that's on podcast or social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all good places to interact with the Weber State Weekly team. And if you're so inclined and you feel so strongly about the work that we try to do to highlight Weber State athletics, you can become a patron. Patreon.com/Weber State Weekly, really good place to support us and help us grow the coffers at Weber State Weekly so that we can reach our ultimate goal. Guys, one day I want to hire a Weber State student to produce media, man. That's my goal. I don't want to take advantage of anybody. I want to hire them. I want to pay them money to make Weber State content. So become a patron and help support that mission, trying to get there to that point and give a Weber State student a head start, but also produce some really good stuff. So
Memes, right? That person's going to create memes for us. That's pretty much,
I got the memes on lockdown. I was thinking more like informative TikToks. Like my vision for it is, hey, like give us a 1 minute breakdown of something cool that happened in the game. Give us these little tidbits going on, little stories happening off the field or on the field, that kind of stuff.
So does that mean we're in like a post meme world and we're now in a TikTok world? Okay, so I'm always trying to gauge just how old I am and how out of touch I am. So this makes perfect sense.
Memes will never get old, Chappie. I mean, you can always have a good meme. And if you saw our social media accounts on Tuesday night, or no, it was Thursday night last week when the Wildcats took a trip down to Orem, and the volleyball team came back down 2-0 to beat the Wolverines 3-2. Many memes were had over that performance, and we almost had another incident of that on Saturday. We'll talk a little bit about that on the volleyball show tomorrow night. But, Chappie, let's talk football, man. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Utah Tech matchup up at Stewart Stadium on Saturday. Like we said, Tech coming into town. If you listen to the game day show, which drops on Saturday morning, a little something for you all to listen to, whether you're at the tailgate or if the team is on the road like they are this weekend, a little something to get you ready before we put the game on and see what's going on. But let's start, Chappie, with we talked a lot in the game day show about the offense, about the Utah Tech offense, and about how prolific passers, right? Like I would say EWU-esque in the prolific way that they pass the ball. I mean, really, really talented. But if you followed Wildcat football for a while, you know that Jay Hill has a way of containing those kinds of offenses. Former cornerback himself, always, a good secondary at Weber State. And so the Wildcats were able to hold that high-flying offense led by Kobe Tracy at the helm for the Trailblazers. They held them to just 245 yards through the air. That is 138 yards below their average. And that's an updated average with last week's numbers, right? Because I didn't look at the average before. So 138 yards below the average that was already down because of that 245 yards. So I'm saying it was at least 150 yards below their before showing up at Stewart Stadium on Saturday. Did you feel it was more the secondary that kind of had that impact, or was it the D line? Because man, they got a lot of hits on Kobe Tracy throughout the game.
Yeah, and Tracy eventually went out. If I remember right, he went out
He did.
late third, early fourth. It was a great combined effort. I mean, they did get yards passing, but it was not even close to what their season average was. I mean, the
Right.
the spread and shred is essentially the run and shoot. They were running the run and shoot,
Yep.
which is June Jones, Hawaii-esque, kind of evolved into a little bit of Mike Leach and into the modern day spread, but it's the run and shoot. So you're going to pass the ball. Our DBs, our defense, they were going to give up passing yards, holding them significantly below what their season average is the win here. Like that,
Right.
that is the win. Them not giving up 400 yards of passing on defense is what's the win there.
Yeah, because I mean, we talked about this during the game day show as well, that we didn't really use the Chadron State game as a D2 school that Utah Tech had played the prior week. I didn't really see that as a good barometer for how they might play the Wildcats, but we did look at their opening game of the season against Sac State in Sacramento. They passed for like 562 yards in that game or something?
Yeah.
A lot, right? And we'll talk about this when we get our opportunity to see Sacramento State here in Ogden coming up in about a month. But the Sac State secondary has, had a lot of turnover because so many seniors left. And so they're a little bit new and young and raw, but 562 yards is nothing to sneeze at. And they didn't even come close to that, right? 245 yards net. The Wildcats held them to. Sec did a great job. But I want to talk more about that D-line, Chappie, because I felt like the D-line was getting home a lot. And if you look, it's like, oh, but they only sacked him like 3 times. You're right. They did only sack him 3 times. But I will say that's 3 times more than they sacked the Western Oregon kid who was squirrely. He was tough to get. And also, they put a lot of hits. Like, I would say that he was either hurried or pressured 90% of the time in the pocket. Chappie, is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, and the hits were not. I don't know if you could hear the crowd's reaction rewatching the broadcast a couple times because
Yeah.
the mic on this, the mic sound on the field isn't optimal in the broadcast, but like they were crunching hits. Like they were not
Yeah,
just
they were
getting to
hitting them.
him. They were there were pads meeting pads, and again, it was a couple times where you could hear the crowd kind of go ooh, and it wasn't because we broke up the pass. It was because the quarterback was getting crunched. And I will credit Kobe Tracy. Like there were a few
Tough kid.
times, oh my gosh, there were a few times watching. I was like, how is this kid getting up? Like, how is he? He is taking a beating basically every play, and he is
Just
getting
about.
back up and slinging the ball. So yes, it was a very good team effort. The secondary and the linebackers held them to where he wasn't getting rid of the ball on a 3-step drop every time, but whenever it was more than a 3-step drop, he was getting hit and getting laid out.
Yeah, and I think that that those hits started to add up, especially in the second half. Like I'd say
Yes.
late third quarter, you started to see his accuracy really started to drop. He was rushing to get the ball out, which also harmed his accuracy. He wasn't hitting guys the way that he had been previously, where he was sort of standing in the pocket with no fear. Added up over the course of the game, and eventually Tracy just he couldn't hit guys. He wasn't finding those windows the way he had previously, and just getting the ball, because I'll give him credit, that kid is a good quarterback. And I think as time goes on, we've said this before, but Utah Tech is building something in St. George, folks. Like
Yes.
they're
Well,
going to be
and they
something
were
in 3-4 years.
and they were tough. Like they were
Yeah.
there was plenty of chippiness like in the Utah State
Oh
game.
yeah.
Like they were not backing down, and like they wanted to be there and they wanted to beat Weber State. It was a fun, enjoyable game. Special shout out to, and I'm totally going to butcher the name, so I'm not even going to say the first name because I'm terrible at these Polynesian names. But Celestine, the kid from Woods Cross,
Yeah.
he was all over the place. Possibly even my defensive MVP, even though he only had a couple tackles. I mean, he hit that quarterback so many times. just was laying out Kobe Tracy, was excited to be there. Jay Hill actually made a note in the post game because Jerry Graybill kind of asked about Celestine's performance, and Jay Hill had mentioned, one of our concerns going into the season was the D line. He mentioned that Celestine was somebody that had climbed the depth chart in fall camp and had gotten injured and had to have a minor surgery, so he'd been out and he's just barely getting back into things. And I was like, great, excellent. If this kid is there fortifying our D line, that's great. That's more depth and more strength that we have.
Yeah, and like you said, a redshirt freshman playing defensive end, and we talked about this with the start of the season. We were interested to see how the defensive ends were going to step up because the loss of George Tarlas, the loss of Logan Latui, the loss of Jared Sheest, to anchor the middle. We were interested to see how things were going to pan out, and I think by and large, this defensive line has really come through. There's opportunities, guys have taken advantage of what they've gotten, like you said, like Celestine, who had massive games. Even though you look at the stat sheet and it's like, what did he do, Colby? And it's like, watch the game. He's impacting the play nearly every single time. He's getting home to the quarterback. He's pushing him to get the ball out. I mean, he's only going to get better. And like we said, redshirt freshman, man. Like this kid is just barely getting opportunities to play now, and he's already having this kind of impact. So amazing to see guys like that just step up and have fun playing. So, Chappie, next question I had was, we talked a little bit in the game day show about the Utah Tech running game. We chatted out specifically Quali Conley, who was sort of their main ball carrier. We said, watch this kid. He can be dangerous. He had a decent game against Sacramento State. Like I said, we didn't really look very much at the Shadron State game. It was just like, it's a D2 game. They got blown out by Tech. It is what it is. But against Sac State, which, is the defending Big Sky champion, he had some reps, but he didn't have such a great night on Saturday. He had 10 net yards in this game. He rushed for 20, but lost 10. And so he ended up with just 10 net yards. The Blazers' top 3 rushers on Saturday night were all quarterbacks. None of them had a long more than 14 yards, and their total rushing was 23 yards. That's it. So, I mean, do you feel like the run defense has just been impeccable? And I think it's going to be really interesting this coming weekend against Alonzo Gilliam, which we'll talk about, later in the week when we put together our preview of UC Davis. But is that something that you see continuing, Chappie, that this is really going to, do a number on some teams?
Well, in a run and shoot offense, the run is not necessarily there to. It's a changeup, right? It's the changeup pitch. So
Keep people honest.
Yes, it's there to keep you honest, to run a draw trap, to run something that's going to keep you on your toes from not a passing down. So the guy isn't expected to put up however many yards, but when you are passing that much, there is space in the middle of the field to run, and we still shut that down. So
yeah, we saw that, right? Like the quarterbacks, they would run at times, but the backers and the DBs were keen on that, and they kept it within reason, right? Like not these big chunk yards of 20, 25 yards. Like I said, nothing more than 14 yards for a long, nothing.
That's exactly right. And to me, so the test is going to be this week. With Alonzo Gilliam and UC Davis, that's as legit a running back as our league has.
A preseason offensive MVP.
That's right. This week will be the test. I mean, the only other running back, well, there's a couple other running backs, but Dotson over at Northern Colorado, who used to be at Sac State.
Yeah.
Right. Nope. That's this is going to be the best running back we're going to face this season.
Unless somehow Isaiah Fonse is healthy by the time the Wildcats take the trip to Bozeman. I mean, I think that everybody would agree that kid is the best running back in the conference, and that's saying something because we've talked a lot about the Wildcats running back room, which is stacked. But man, Isaiah Fonse he's just great. And plus the kid, I forgot the kid's name down at NAU. He's been really good too. But
he has been good.
Alonzo Gilliam is going to be something.
Yeah. So this week will ultimately be the test. I won't read too much into the rushing yards there, just because schematically a run and shoot is not meant to produce a ton of running yards, even though they did against Sac State when they passed. But yeah, it's a good result for the defense. This weekend will be the test.
Yeah. Talking a little bit more about the offense. I mean, quarterback Bronson Barron, Big Sky Offensive Player of the Week. They announced today. He had 368 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, that's the best performance we've seen from Bronson Barron since the very first Idaho State game that he played to start the spring season. I mean, would you agree?
And it was a better performance in that game.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah,
better than that.
we on the game day show, I clearly miscalculated what our scheme was going to be going into the game. I had said that we were probably going to run ball control and run the offense and run, meaning run the ball, because that was where Utah Tech had struggled. Yeah, we didn't do that. I mean, we did. We ran the ball very effectively, but I did not see Bronson Barron passing for nearly 400 yards in the game, and it was a very welcome sight and a great performance. The thing that stands out to me about his performance is the chemistry that he has with T-Mac
It's good.
and Jacob Sharp
And Jacob
is
Sharp.
is amazing.
Yep.
But T-Mac especially. I mean, so for the last couple of years, I mean, Rashid Shaheed would outrun anybody down the sideline, which shout out to T-Mac this year. T-Mac's outrunning people.
He's doing that, right?
He's getting open. He's beating guys. He's beating guys on streaks, which is amazing.
Yeah, and that first touchdown is a testament to that, right? Like,
Yes,
straight away, just like boom, we're gonna try it, and we're gonna try it deep. And it was a well thrown ball.
yes,
T-Mac, I mean,
yes,
the ball is out in front of T-Mac just so that he can grab it, haul it in, touchdown, right?
yes. And that happened last week against Utah State too. But to me, the big takeaway is that the chemistry that those two especially have is something else. I mean, in the last couple of years, Rashid, we all knew was going to be faster than whatever DB they had on the field, but oftentimes the ball just wasn't there. Whether it was, it seemed like it was overthrown most of the time, but it just wasn't there all the time. The balls that he's throwing to T Mac and the deep one to Jacob Sharp, they're perfect. Like they are perfectly thrown passes. They could not, the point where it could not be any better placed, and that's the combination of those two. Whatever chemistry they have there is just working out beautifully. Those deep balls and the fade balls like that are
The fade.
hard to throw. They are
Yeah,
they
'cause
are not. Those are difficult passes.
that's a finesse throw, right? Like you gotta put the ball just so where the receiver can get it. Like we said, got to be a little bit out in front to keep it away from the defender, but it's got to be in just the right spot at just the right time to give the receiver an opportunity to haul it in. And I mean, especially that fade right now. I mean, that is just that pass right now is money every time. If they can throw it, if they can continue to execute it at the level that they are, it is impossible to defend. Like, you simply can't defend it if they get it in the
Well,
right spot at the right time.
here's what I'm loving about Coach Mental's offense right now. To me, the wide receivers are doing one of three things, and it's like they have the option to do any one of those three things on any play, and this is what's keeping the defense honest. We saw, especially Jacob Sharp against Utah State and T-Mac, the slant over the middle. That slant play is always there. That slant play can easily turn into a slant in and a move out to run a fade, right? The wrinkle I noticed on Saturday was just doing, instead of a slant or a fade, they're just doing a 2-yard stop and turning around. But the fact that it's like every play they have one of those three options, and that's what's keeping the DB honest. It makes it absolutely phenomenal for the wide receivers because they're guessing every time. You're not running the same routes every time because it's three-dimensional, as it were. There's three options that seems like they can run, and who knows, there's probably more that me as intermediate level fan as far as football knowledge
Right.
knows.
We don't know what the playbook is. Yeah, we have no
Yeah,
idea.
but
We're just
but from
watching.
what I'm seeing, it's like every play they could either run a slant, they could either run a fade, or they could run a 2-yard stop, and it can be any one of the guys on any one of those plays, and it makes it so the balls are completed and it's giving the receiver space. And from what I'm seeing, that's the genius of the offense so far.
Yeah, and so this is really kind of my question to you, Chappie, is Barron had a great game, wins Offensive Player of the Week for the first time since his debut as Wildcat QB1. And so it seems like he's getting more comfortable in mental system. He's making quick decisions. He understands where he needs to be and where to throw the ball. The O line is playing well and defending him. There was not a sack in this game. Yeah,
It was not a
he
sack.
had
That's what I was going to say. That's an excellent point. There was not a lot of holding the ball, which is in the
that's how the
past where
offense
we've.
works.
Yes, I think in the past that's where we felt like Bronson kind of struggled was when he was having to go to his second, third, fourth option. Eventually, either got sacked, throw wasn't there, something wasn't there. But when the first decision was there and it was a 3-step drop throw, we all noticed that for the first couple weeks. He seemed to be strongest there, and that 100% continued on Saturday night. I thinking back on that, that's a very good point. There were no sacks, and he did not do a ton of scrambling, rolling out, trying to find open guys as his third, fourth option.
Yeah. And so my question to you then, Chappie, is the schedule ramps up. We've talked about that. The schedule gets really, really stiff up to the point of 3 critical weeks, the final 3 weeks of October, where the season will be, made or broken. Do you see him struggling as the Wildcat position, because that Montana secondary is coming and it's no joke.
I mean, is he going to throw for 400 yards every game? No.
I don't know about
You know,
that, right?
it's kind of the point that we made last week, though. Does
But
he
Mental
need?
doesn't want that, right?
Does he?
We
Yeah,
talked about balanced offense.
balance. Does he need to throw for 400 yards every game for us to win the game? No. So it's okay if he doesn't throw for 500 yards against Montana. That doesn't mean that we lose that game. If he doesn't throw for 500 yards against Sac State, which is probably the more likely scenario with their secondary, that doesn't mean that we lose the game. What it means is that we have options, which is great. That is what we want.
It's a good position to be in.
Well, confidence is such a funny thing. I mean, confidence can make people better, especially in sports. If guys feel comfortable and start feeling, I mean, confidence is just a really great, amazing thing. And when you get that, it can do good things for you. So absolutely hope that Bronson just keeps going and that he's the quarterback that we all envision him being when he came in as a true freshman.
So, talking about confidence, Damon Bankston had a
Mm.
phenomenal night, 161 yards. The Wildcats totaled 255 yards on the ground. What is it about the run game? Because and about Bankston's game specifically, because I felt like the plays were good, that the opportunities that Bankston got were good, but he made the most of them. There were lots of times where there were a lot of yards after contact where he
Yes.
just made things happen using his own talent and skill that were beyond the play call, right? And so he achieves 161 yards, which, by the way, he had like 123 yards all season last year. So he eclipses that in one game, scores one of the touchdowns. What was it about Bankston on Saturday night that just allowed him to just really cut loose? And 161 yards, not nothing.
I've been trying to figure out how to verbalize what Damon does on the field that makes him really good. And I don't know, the best way I could think of to say it is that he picks his holes, right? Like he's waiting for a spot, but the moment that he hits the hole, it's lightning fast. Like
acceleration with this guy, right? Like
yes,
I talked about that last week. It's like this dude, when he accelerates, we saw this in the Utah State game. When he accelerates on the sideline, like this is where this man ran track down in Texas, right? And I think we haven't said enough about the fact that some of these dudes are coming up from Texas, which is a just stacked state when it comes to high school football, right? And so Bankston comes in, and one of the things I noticed doing research for the show was that Bankston he led the state of Texas, and the stacked high school football state that it is at the 5A level. I don't know how many levels they have, but they have the 5A level. He led all rushers with 1,600 yards. That's who he is.
So he's, but it's so genius because sometimes the fast guys, like they're fast like a missile is fast, meaning like they're fast from moment one and they don't know how to veer a lot, right? Give me a straight line and let me run there. And sometimes that's the problem with the track guys. Damon doesn't have that problem. He's picking his spots and waiting for an opening, but then once the opening is there, he's not just walking through the door. Like he's sprinting through it before anybody even knows that the door's been open. That's what makes this kid great. That's what I saw Saturday. That's what makes him incredibly fun to watch. It's he is having the 1-2 punch and then the 3-4 punch that we have
Yeah.
and the running back room is just it's going to do good things for us throughout the year. It will absolutely make us formidable
Yeah.
if
And
they stay healthy.
I think that you make a good point too, where you say that like I mean, Millard saying here Bankston doesn't go down at first contact. He's absolutely right. He
And it's
doesn't.
exactly right.
Lots of yards after contact, but also the acceleration makes it difficult to bring him down after first contact, right? In
Yeah,
a
yeah,
way that
he's not getting wrapped up. Like he's in the secondary
right,
before
it's
you
hard
know
to
it.
wrap up on the first exactly. He gets to the secondary so quickly that guys are trying to catch up and bring him down, and by then he's getting 2, 3, 4 more yards on top of it, and so it just really creates problems for them because of his ability to accelerate so quickly. But beyond Bankston's performance, I mean, I felt even though Josh Davis didn't necessarily have as many touches as he did in the Utah State game, I thought he continued to look good. He continued to do what he did well, had a touchdown run right up the gut again. I mean, this is a rejuvenated Josh Davis, and it's good to continue to see him thrive because it's working, man. Like when we talked to Coach Mental and we said, "Who are you excited about?" and he said, "It's JD, it's Josh Davis." We're seeing that in mental schemes, right? The plays that he's calling for Josh, the opportunities that Josh is creating, not partly because of the plays that Coach Mental is calling, but also because of the things that he's able to do because of his feet, right? Like his feet are just so I don't know. His footwork is so good that he just gets opportunities. And so 15 carries for 64 yards. You can say, well, Colby, that's not that good. It's not a very good long. It's not a huge Josh Davis day. You're right. He's had better games, but
When you're splitting time, that's a great day, and that's what they're doing.
yeah,
It appears as though
great day.
they're giving each back like a set. Okay, you're they're getting a series where it's primarily them until they need a break. So Josh Davis does not have to be the 100% back, and if you're running 50% of the plays and get 60 yards, that's a pretty good day.
Yeah, my bad though. The touchdown that I was thinking was actually the Utah State game. Damon Bankston was the only running back with a touchdown in this one. Um, we talked about the running game. I want to talk back. I want to go back to Tech a little bit, and I want to talk about Joey Hobart because that guy was a problem in the first half. Can we agree with that? Utah Tech's wide receiver. He was a huge target for Tracy in the first half, but man, that second half they shut him down. I mean, he was a non-factor in the second half after the coaching staff made the adjustment, and I think he had maybe 1, 2 passes in the second half that were successful. What did they do, Chappie? Like to your eyes, watching the game at Stewart Stadium, what was it that took Joey Hobart out of the game because he was so impactful in the first half and he just didn't exist in the second?
So one of the hallmarks of J Hill football, um, honestly, prior to last fall, in my opinion, was halftime adjustments.
You said it.
We would always win that battle. I don't necessarily feel like we did last fall as much as we had in years past. Like there were games last year. It was like, man, this is not typical, but it is very good to see that part of the coaching staff back. Meaning, when it comes third quarter, you almost always know that there's going to be adjustments made, and it's going to shut the other team down in ways. And it completely shut Tech down. I mean, they did not score
They did not
in the
score.
second half. They did not score at all. So I definitely credit it to a shift in coverage, but also we talked about the D line, but Tracy was hurt. I mean, they were getting banged around.
Yeah, he
The
was.
combination of quarterbacks getting tired and they brought in the second guy who was funny that we had commented on the game day show that he had 3 picks and he immediately had 2 picks pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough.
And so Victor Gabalis is his name. He I mean, we can debate whether or not you felt that the fumble that, Garrett Beck recovered and ran back and then got the face mask going out of bounds, which was like, what is that play, by the way, man? Like that was just a straight up dirty play. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like what are we doing here, man? Um, but then they say, oh no, his arm was going forward, incomplete pass, not a fumble. And then 2 plays later, I think it was Abraham Williams got the pick
Yep.
again. So it was like, whatever. Like the turnover was happening one way or another, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, credit to the coaching staff for making adjustments and doing what what they've consistently done in the past, which is just out scheme people halftime. I love it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, shout out to Abraham Williams. 2 picks in that game. A real coming out for him. Local product out of West High School. I mean, if you watched the broadcast, you heard a lot about Utah High School players in this one. Heard an awful lot about high school. Didn't hear so much about the Southern California and the Texas players or the Idaho players or the Washington players, but heard a lot about Utah high school players in this one.
Apparently, the announcers were of the opinion that it was glorified high school football. It was not. I don't know, but apparently that's their take. Would they do the same thing if they were calling a Utah State game? No.
I don't know, man. But shout out to Abraham Williams. Like I said, 2 picks in this game. Big coming out for him. I saw, when they announced the awards this morning, who had won Offensive Player of the Week and Defensive Player of the Week, that Abraham Williams' name was on the list of someone nominated. I think that's totally fair with the performance that he had. Just great performance by him. Hope to see more. That secondary is just so good, and we've talked ad nauseum about that.
Yes.
Last question I wanted to ask was turnovers. Last season, we know that a hallmark of a Jay Hill run program is that he likes to see turnovers, win the turnover battle. We've heard players like Mitch Tulane, former players like Mitch Tulane say, right? It's like you win the turnover battle. That is one of the key things that Jay Hill wants to see happen. That happened. Wildcats did a great job forcing turnovers. The defense forced 3 turnovers. Like I said, I think it should have been 4. We can debate that, whatever. Do you see them leading the Big Sky in that category this season, or do you think it's just a function of who they've played thus far? Because we're talking about a D2 school. I mean, 4 turnovers against Utah State, which you can talk about that, but then 3 more against Utah Tech. Is turnovers going to be the name of the game for the Wildcats? Is that going to be a thing that continues? Will they lead the conference at the end of the season? What do you think, Sheppy?
If we are, then we're in a very good position to win the league. I
Great,
mean, that's
takeaways were huge.
That was a problem that we had last year. There were not many games that we won the turnover battle, and Jay Hill pointed it out many times during the course of the season, and it just did not seem to get better. Not only we've talked about Bronson Barron having an awful lot of yards, there were 0 interceptions. So Coach Mendel told us the hallmark of his offense is balance and taking care of the ball, and we did.
He got lucky on one. He got lucky
yes,
on
that one was a drop,
ball.
And that was just a bad pass. I mean, that was misread, threw into double coverage.
Yeah.
That was maybe the one thing, one real place that he didn't look great on the night. But still, I mean, I do think our defense is going to get turnovers. We mentioned it last week. We had Des Williams on. They're nasty. Like they've
Mark Collins is back this week.
Yes, they absolutely have an element of nasty to them, and you can tell that when they get the ball, like those guys want to score too. they just, I'm so impressed by the moxie that those guys have. So I do believe, especially as strong as our secondary is, we're going to get interceptions for most of the season. That puts us in a good position to win the turnover battle. If we take care of the ball on offense, then we could absolutely be near the top of the league in that stat.
So I think this is a good opportunity to talk about something that I've been working on. I really think that the Wildcats need a turnover belt. That's what I think. I think we need to bring back the turnover song, which was Dubs Up, right? You remember that song? What? Mm-hmm. Bring back the turnover song. Get the Wildcats a turnover belt. So I've worked with a guy on Twitter, Salt City Swagger. You know this guy? He makes the belts for everybody.
I've seen those.
So we've got a design put together. I'm going to start a GoFundMe. It's about $350, I think, is what it costs. I'll have to go back and double check on the amount. But we're going to try and crowdfund the money so we can gift that turnover belt to the school. Talk to the coaching staff. They say they're interested. If we get the belt made, they'd love to have it. So I'm going to put together that GoFundMe campaign to see if we can raise the money to get the belt made and then gift it to the team. And then hopefully we'll see guys wearing it an awful lot on the sidelines, man, because
I'm
so far,
positive
so
that those guys would absolutely love to see that. Probably be a good way to get the crowd involved as well.
Yeah.
Before we move off of the game, though, if we're about there, shout out. Hayes Hadley was really good on Saturday.
Yeah.
And the comment that I made, to Sean watching the game, I said, I want to be accused of heresy here, but looking at the way Hayes Hadley returns punts, he might be a more valuable weapon for us than Rashid was. And that is not to discount Rashid's contributions, because
You can't.
you cannot.
He's an
And I'm
all-time
not,
Wildcat. The only Wildcat to ever be an All-American 4 times. The
it's
only
exactly
Wildcat
right.
to achieve that.
But Rashid was not nearly as strong on punts as he was on kick returns. Kick returns was his specialty. Get that guy going.
Very good.
What Hayes Hadley can do, and has been doing for the team this year, it's flipping the field, man.
Yeah.
Like how many times against Western Oregon were we down inside the 20 simply by virtue of a punt return? I mean, he's getting 15 to 20 yards consistently, most punt returns where he's not fair catching it. And that very much flips the field in the Wildcats' favor, puts us in a great position to score, but also just to win that field position battle. I mean, when it comes down to field position, the Montana State game last year at home, that entire game was field position.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Literally the entire game was the coaches going back and forth and saying, we don't think you can score. And whoever is going to have the field position or gets a big play is going to win the game. And that's what happened. So again, not to minimize Rashid's contributions, but with a good defense, we get a lot more punt returns than hopefully we do kickoff returns. And man, Hayes Hadley he looked really, really good on Saturday night.
Yeah. So Chris Ferry has well, before I talk about this, I want to point out some of the stats. So Hayes 9 punt returns on Saturday, 105 yards total. His long was 26, but he was averaging about 12 yards. So every time they kick the ball to him, he's getting about 12 yards back. So you do the math. You know what I mean? Just great. But the other thing I was going to say is Chris Ferry has been talking about this on social media, and I think maybe it's something we should bring up to the folks in the stadium. Every time Hayes Hadley's going to do a punt return, like, let's play some Jimi Hendrix, let's play some Purple Haze, man, because like that's that dude's theme song. Like, let's make it happen. So we'll see. But anyway, any last words on the game, Chappie, before?
If the negatives, if there's a negative to be pointed out, um, there were a couple special teams mistakes. Hayes Hadley did have botched punt return. We did have a couple roughing the kicker penalties that cost us. There are still some things to button up. As nasty as our guys on defense are, sometimes I think it makes them a little bit undisciplined. And my thought after the game Saturday was that was a great game. There are still things to button up, and that's why you have a preseason. That is 100% why you have preseason games, is to get that worked out. I guess my expectation is more, which as a fan is always a questionable thing to do anyway. But in my head, I'm like, do we quote unquote beat JMU? If we're playing JMU here tonight instead of Dixie, are we winning that game? And in order to do that, we'd have to play an almost flawless game. So those little things I think can just kind of hurt us. There are a few things to button up, and this season that would be, if we play Montana, do we win that game? And those little things are the ones that kind of get me. I'm just like, man, in a close game, those are the things that can make or break a game. You get a roughing the punter call late in the fourth quarter against Montana, that could cost you the game. You get a roughing the passer or a unnecessary roughness play because you were being a little over aggressive on defense.
Sportsmanlike conduct has been an issue, right?
That's exactly it. Or if you muff a punt return late, like those can cost us in close games later in the year. So if there's something we can button up, it's those few things, but you can't be too mad about the results on Saturday.
Yeah, because I said this. We'll put our grades out soon. We started compiling them today, so we'll get that out on the blog. But I talked about this in my grades about the fact that I truly believe that had that roughing the punter or running into the kicker penalty not happened, that I don't think they score 7 there, because that 15 yards that they got gave them confidence and gave them the momentum that they needed. That was a 3 and out. and then you give them that penalty, then they built up momentum and they ended up
Yes.
scoring a touchdown. I think if it stays a 3-and-out and you take care of business on special teams, you don't like it's a blowout bigger than what we saw, because I feel like that one drive gave the Trailblazers a lot of confidence that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Because at that point, they felt like they could play because they were able to move the ball. That one gift gave them what they needed to sort of prove it to themselves. And they did, because they scored in consecutive possessions after that. Those are the only 2 possessions that they scored on. But still, it looked for a second like that game was going to be a track meet, because they scored on that one, and then they got the ball back and they scored again. And so I was a little bit nervous that I think, like I said, personally, that if that doesn't happen, the Trailblazers get blown out worse than they do, and they just get demoralized. They don't have the confidence to get up. Tom Lakey making a good point here. Red zone offense has got to be
Yes,
better.
yes,
A lot of
it does.
left points on
That
right. A
that
lot of
that
threes that should have been sevens. Getting
that's
getting turning over the ball on the goal line, or at the 1-yard line.
yes. That's
Getting
a
no points.
that was a huge thing. That absolutely was a huge thing that I noticed was that, especially that stretch in the third quarter there, where we had 2 field goals and a missed field goal that went off the upright. Um, like, those are, again, when we're talking about, those are the things that when we're playing Montana or a top tier team in the conference, like, born deep in the playoffs. If we're playing somebody deep in the playoffs, like, those are the things, those are the errors that you look back at the end of the game and go, dang, if we'd have got 7 instead of 3 on one or all 3 of those possessions in the third quarter that ended in a field goal,
We're
it's
not
a different
sweating.
game. So,
Yep.
yes.
All right. So that's Utah Tech, folks. Good win for the Wildcats. What was it, 44-14? So just as a push right there on that over/under, or right there on the
Ah,
cover. It was a
so
push.
so does that mean Sean was right? Because he picked the over. So technically, neither
Well,
of us
that was
won,
that was the spread. So 30 points was the spread.
and it was push. So it was a push. That means neither of us win, right?
Yep. Nobody wins. All right, Chappie. So
Vegas keeps our money.
we're gonna move on right now for our final little thing. So I prepared just a question. I'm calling the segment "What If," and I've been thinking about this a lot. This is a thing I think about a lot. If you, Chappie, Dustin Chapman, could fundraise for any project for athletics on campus, what would you pick and why?
Hmm.
I
So I
mean,
know
you
what
had
the
to.
answer is. I don't know if it's necessarily athletics, but I know what my answer is. I would love nothing more than to see a big W back up on the mountain.
Okay.
Um, I'd like that thing to be there. I'd like it to be able to light up white during homecoming week like it does, but I'd also like it to be able to light up purple. Um, when they win games, let the whole city know that they won the game. All of Weber and Davis County, and even parts of Box Elder County that can see it, know that Weber State won a game. Want that thing to light up purple. Let it be a post game ceremony to turn on that W and earn the win. I'd also, sitting in the stadium, how cool would it be if we score a touchdown and that thing's just up there blinking on the mountain, blinking and celebrating the touchdown. I don't know.
Train
It's
horns
atmosphere.
going off.
That's right. It's all
Happening.
atmosphere. And to me, I don't know why. I mean, you've seen the pictures. If you see there's a photo of Willie Sojourner around, late 60s, early 70s, where they used to have a WS up on the mountain in that same exact spot. I wish I knew the story of why it left, but I would love nothing more than for that to make a reappearance and be part of a game day tradition for us.
Uh, I like it. I think for me, I was trying to keep it football related, but I feel like the Wildcats have spent a lot. They've invested quite a lot of money in football over the last little bit. That my mind sort of went back to hoops. I don't know if you saw this, but about 6 months ago, maybe the University of Montana unveiled their new locker rooms at Dahlberg. They're nice.
Very nice.
I think that the Wildcats should do a similar thing. I think that uh, if I were picking the thing that I would want to renovate, it's new locker rooms at the D or something to do with the D, because spent a lot of money
The
on football. Tom Lakey here in the comments saying, yeah, new midfield logo. I think new turf altogether. I mean, that turf is
We're due for new turf.
due for new turf,
And
right?
and the Wildcat logo in the end zone is, I mean, they'll give us, crap about the Flying W not being like an officially school sanctioned thing. Whatever that Wildcat is in the end zone is not in, that's not canon in any Weber State anywhere. It's there. It doesn't exist anywhere else in anywhere in the school's history.
Yeah.
But I'm with
Um,
you. If I Little birdie told me a while ago that the D might be up for some renovation. If we are talking about the D, I would love for nothing more than for them to kind of do very similar to what the Jazz have done with the D events, or with the D event center with Energy Solution of the arena, and take they
the
build
Viv,
out.
dude. It's the Viv.
Yeah. Oh, I said Energy Solution.
Unless
Man,
you're
I'm
unless
like,
you're a traditionalist, it's
I'm
Delta
like,
Center.
it's the Delta Center. That's what I should have said. But I wish they could just build on kind of a modern concession facility, kind of like the Jazz did, where they had that they built out the overhang and just made that an area, a glass area. I would love for them to do nothing more than to just kind of build out one of the openings, and you know build something that becomes kind of your modern concession facilities. As far as football goes, yeah, no, Jeff Millard, we are not doing a purple field.
So I
That's
was gonna say that. I mean, Millard's in
that
here
is
saying purple field. I don't think so, guys. I mean, I
no,
bag on Eastern Washington enough for that awful red field.
no,
I'm not going to do the same
I,
thing. I don't know if you've ever seen Central Arkansas's field where it's
no,
purple and gray and it
nope,
alternates.
no, it's not, no,
We're not doing
no.
that. And plus, I don't think they can do that anymore, right? Like NCAA changed the rules so nobody can make colored fields anymore, right?
There is, I mean, if we're talking about improvements to football, um,
I,
if it were my dream, I would do the entire West Side. Like, to me, there's really not a ton of reason to buy tickets on the West Side other than to be out of the sun. I would make that more comfortable and go all chairbacks on that side. I would love to see that. I do know
all
that they're
back.
in the long range plan. There is, there is the plan to at some point remove the track, and kind of build down and extend the bleachers a little bit. Who knows if that will ever come to pass, but that does exist in the long range plan for the university.
Would love that.
Make it a true football stadium. Bring the fans a little closer to the field. Um, you know, if football related, that would be probably what I would do. Other than that, the game experience at Stewart Stadium is good. I just want more people there.
Yeah. Last two things that I'll say. Bobby Hall was in the comments saying the sound system upgrade. I agree with that. That'd be a nice thing, sound system upgrade. Or I would love to see some sort of an investment in a technology that would make it easier to order food, because we've got the food trucks there, which is great, but the lines are fairly long, and so
They need about
you've
they
got
need about double the number of food trucks that they have there, and when it's a good crowd. Well, it's even when it's a moderate crowd.
right, because we're talking about we were at 50% capacity on Saturday, 9,000 people. And when I've been, it's been like 4 or 5,000, and even then, the food trucks, were it was a little too much. And so, uh, if there was a way that you could, sort of do like what the Raptors do, where it's like you can order your food in your seat, and then you can go pick it up when it's ready. A system like that, I think, would really improve the game day experience, keep people engaged in the game longer, but also the opportunity to, get those concessions a little bit easier. That's a thing that I would invest in. All right, guys, let's take a look at the upcoming schedule. Saturday, September 24th, Wildcats taking the trip out to Davis to face the Aggies in California. That game will be at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It'll be on ESPN Plus. Unless you're taking the trip to California, then good luck. I'm in Davis. Then bye week. So I guess we should shout out September 30th, Friday, September 30th. Wildcat fans will be at University Broiler at noon. The Wildcat fan lunch will be there. So hang out there. No, it was Tom Lakey was in here saying they were going to pass the hat around about the turnover belt. So yeah, we'll talk about it there. Here's the comment right here. It was, yeah, man. Send me the details. Design. We'll get the design posted. It's really cool. But yeah, so Friday, September 30th, Wildcat fans will be at University Broiler at noon, talking lunch, having lunch, supporting a good local business, talking Wildcat sports. And then the following week, Chappie.
I was gonna say, you're going to go with Eastern Washington, but yeah, we've talked about the 3 games toward the end of the season before NAU as being the tough stretch. These next 2 games are almost as tough of a stretch. I mean,
They're good, right? These are good
Dave,
tests.
Davis is great. We talked tonight about how good of a coach Jay Hill is. We all know how good of a coach he is in halftime adjustments. I feel like Jay out schemes the coaching staff, out schemes guys a lot. Dan Hawkins presents a formidable coaching matchup. Like the games the games that we've played against Davis are always well coached. The matchup from a coaching staff standpoint is always very close, and so Davis and Ewu, those last 3 weeks are going to be really amazing. But these next 2 games over the course of these 3 weeks might be the thing that defines us, because it's going to tell us if those last 3 games are going to matter at all.
Yeah. So coming up after the bye week, Eastern Washington coming to rate. That is the homecoming game. That game will be at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. The W will be on the mountain. It's a good opportunity to be there. Fan Fest will be going. Get out there and tailgate. Get your tickets at WeberStateSports.com or watch it like me on ESPN Plus. Wishing that you were there. Nothing I love more than the homecoming game. It's my favorite time of year. It was the last game that I was at before we moved away, and so I always love the homecoming game. So be there for me, guys. Then Saturday, October 15th, Wildcats take a trip up to Portland State to get revenge after what happened last year, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on ESPN Plus. And then finally, Saturday, October 22nd, Wildcats take the trip to Bozeman. Wildcats will face the Bobcats in Bozeman, 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on ESPN Plus. I've heard that a number of folks are actually going up for that game. I've considered it myself. There's a direct flight from Nashville to Bozeman. Might have to do it. I don't know. We'll see. But that game will be on ESPN Plus, like we said, or you can drive up there. So wrap up the show. Email WeberStateWeekly@gmail.com. If you got ideas, you want to share some stuff with me, you want to, chew me out, that's how you do it. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all good places to interact with us. Patreon, we want to support. If you want to support us, we really appreciate you. We want to thank all of our patrons. I will say that I just published a number of interviews that we did about maybe 6 months ago with a lot of the new faces you're seeing on the team. All of those interviews were available to our Patreon supporters 6 months ago. I'm just now publishing them on our YouTube channel so that you all can check those out. I'll be putting them on the blog as well. But if you become a patron, that's the kind of content that you get by supporting us. So you get that early. So really appreciate our patrons. And then the blog, of course, WeberStateWeekly.com. We'll be getting our grades up for the Utah Tech game soon. Chappie, want to thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me about football tonight. It was a good weekend. Looking forward to the weekend. And, of course, looking forward to the game day show where we can talk a little bit more about that matchup. So we'll wrap up the show like we usually do, Chappie. Weber State.
Great.